Hey guys, tonight we're standing on the misty slopes of ancient China. Imagine the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something grassy, almost bitter. You can hear the wind rustling through bamboo groves and feel the cool, damp air clinging to your skin. Before you is a gnarled, unassuming shrub, its leaves a vibrant emerald green. You might think it's just another plant, but oh, you'd be wrong. This, my friend, is tea. And tonight, we're going way back, before the delicate porcelain cups and elaborate ceremonies, to a time when tea was less a refined beverage and more of a survival tool. A bitter, leafy life raft in a world that, let's be honest, you probably won't survive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments, along with your local time. I always love seeing where in the world you all are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're stumbling through the undergrowth, your stomach grumbling like a discontented bear. You've been foraging for days, trying to find something, anything, to stave off the gnawing hunger. You spot a cluster of these strange, vibrant leaves. Your first thought? Ew, leaves. But desperation, as they say, is a powerful seasoning. You pluck a handful, cautiously sniffing them. That bitter, grassy scent is intriguing. You cautiously pop a leaf into your mouth. Big mistake. The bitterness explodes on your tongue, a full frontal assault on your taste buds. Your face contorts in a grimace. You want to spit it out, but that nagging hunger wins. You chew, and chew, and chew. Slowly, something strange happens. The bitterness starts to fade, replaced by a slightly sweet aftertaste. Your mouth feels cleaner, and oddly, you feel a little more alert. You keep chewing, and soon you've consumed the whole handful. Little did you know, you've just participated in one of humanity's earliest encounters with tea. We're talking way before the Tang Dynasty, a period that many consider the golden age of tea. We're talking about a time when tea was less about pleasant afternoons and more about basic survival. The earliest evidence of tea consumption dates back thousands of years, unearthed from ancient burial sites and archaeological digs in China. What's particularly cool is how it's showing up in these ancient tombs alongside medicines. It suggests that early humans probably viewed tea as a cure-all. But was it actually a cure-all? Probably not. I mean, if tea cured everything, we wouldn't have, well, doctors. But those early tea leaves did contain potent compounds. Think about caffeine, a natural stimulant. It's like a jolt of energy, a quick escape from fatigue. You feel its effects, even now, centuries later. You notice the weariness in your limbs begin to lift, and your senses sharpen, just slightly. And here's a fun fact. Did you know that some early tea preparations involved mixing the leaves with things like wild grains, and even animal fats? Talk about an acquired taste. This wasn't some delicate brew sipped from fine porcelain. It was a gruel, a thick, hearty concoction designed to provide sustenance and energy. Historians still argue whether these early tea soups were actually palatable or just a testament to the resilience of early humans. Imagine grandma's secret family recipe handed down over generations. Probably best to just smile and nod. Now, imagine you're a shaman, a wise woman or man of your tribe. You've observed the effects of this strange leaf on your people. You see how it seems to ward off fatigue, how it settles upset stomachs. You begin to experiment, drying the leaves, crushing them, even fermenting them, which, let's face it, was probably an accident at first. You slowly discover that different preparations yield different results. The aroma alone is a powerful tool, and its essence fills your dwelling with an intoxicating sense of possibility. The concept of medicinal teas wasn't exclusive to China, though. Different cultures around the world have utilized local plants for similar purposes for millennia. In South America, they had yerba mate. In North America, various indigenous tribes used different herbs and plants for their healing properties. But the unique properties of the Camellia sinensis plant, the specific tea plant we're talking about tonight, gave it a special edge in Chinese culture. And speaking of Chinese culture, you might be surprised to learn that, early on, tea was even used as a form of currency. Imagine going to the market and trading a bundle of tea leaves for a chicken or a length of cloth. It's like a leafy Bitcoin, centuries ahead of its time. The value of tea fluctuated depending on its quality and rarity, making it a practical, if somewhat unconventional, form of exchange. But why tea? Why not just rely on other herbs or grains? Well, besides the aforementioned caffeine kick, tea also contains antioxidants, substances that help protect the body against damage from free radicals. Plus, it's relatively easy to cultivate. A tea plant can thrive in a variety of climates, provided it has enough moisture and well-drained soil. Historians still debate the exact origins of tea cultivation, with some arguing that it began in southwestern China, while others point to regions in Southeast Asia. Regardless, what is sure is that early adopters quickly learned to propagate and nurture the wild tea plants, guaranteeing a steady supply of their magical leaves. Okay, enough serious stuff. Let's get back to you. You're sitting by a crackling fire, the scent of wood smoke mingling with the faint aroma of roasted tea leaves. You've learned to prepare the leaves in a rudimentary way, roasting them over the fire to reduce the bitterness, then steeping them in hot water. The resulting brew is still rough and earthy, a far cry from the delicate teas you might be familiar with today, but it's warming and invigorating. You sip the tea, feeling its warmth spread through your body. You look up at the starry sky, feeling a sense of connection to the world around you. You may not know the names of the stars or the intricacies of the universe, but you know the value of this simple drink. You know that it has helped you survive, that it has given you strength and clarity. And you know that, in its own small way, it has shaped the course of your life. It's interesting to consider how something as simple as tea, something we often take for granted today, played such a vital role in the lives of our ancestors. It wasn't just a beverage, it was a medicine, a currency, a source of energy, and a symbol of connection to the natural world. And while the Tang Dynasty is often lauded as the beginning of China's tea-drinking culture, the true story starts long, long before that. Okay, let's steep ourselves in the story of Lu Yu, shall we? I'm talking about the OG tea-fluencer, the grandpappy of green tea lattes, Alright, I'll stop. Just imagine, if you will, that it's about 733 AD, a world without instant gratification and definitely no TikTok dances. You're a babe abandoned at a monastery in Jingling, smack dab in the middle of the Tang Dynasty. Not the best start, is it? The monks, bless their cotton socks, are kind enough to scoop you up. You don't know who your parents are, which, honestly, is a bit of a downer. You're named Lu Yu, meaning something along the lines of leftover fish, a touch uninspired, admittedly. But hey, they worked with what they had. You spend your early years learning the ways of the temple. But let's be honest, you're a bit of a handful. You much prefer running around and causing minor chaos to meditating silently. It's not that you're malicious, you just have ideas. One day, you decide enough is enough. The chanting? Boring. The robes? Itchy. You'd rather do, well, anything else. So you escape. Yes, you, Lu Yu, run away to join a traveling acting troupe. Historians still argue whether this was pure rebellious spirit or a deep-seated desire for dramatic expression, but the results are the same. You're trading enlightenment for encores. You embrace the life of a performer, and actually, you're not half bad. You play all sorts of roles, from hapless peasants to, apparently, even writing your own farces. I picture them, delightfully terrible, full of slapstick and probably overly long monologues. You even pen a 3-act comedy called The Raillery of the Vices, which, given the era, was probably considered avant-garde or maybe just plain weird. During this time, you meet a wise old man, a scholar, and, more importantly, a tea aficionado. Now, tea had been around for centuries at this point. Legend has it, Emperor Shennong discovered it way back in 2737 BC when leaves from a wild tea tree blew into his boiling water. But at this point, tea's still kind of a niche thing, mostly enjoyed by monks and wealthier families. It hasn't yet become the ubiquitous beverage it is today. The old man sees something in you, a certain discernment, maybe, or perhaps just pity for your hilariously bad acting. Whatever the reason, he decides to take you under his wing. He teaches you to read and write, imparting not just knowledge, but a love of learning. And, crucially, he introduces you to tea, real tea, not that bitter swill the monks were brewing back at the monastery. Now you start to get it. You delve into the nuances of flavor, the perfect brewing temperature, the subtle art of appreciating each sip. It's like Someone finally turned on the color in your world. You eventually decide that the traveling acting life isn't quite your cup of tea. Sorry, I had to. You return to the monastery, not to become a monk, mind you, but to study. You're a changed person, focused, driven. You soak up knowledge like a biscuit in, well, tea. You dedicate yourself to understanding every aspect of this amazing plant. While living near the monastery, you become friends with a local official and scholar named Zhou Fuzi. Zhou had built a tea house near the monastery, a place for people to gather, discuss, and, of course, drink tea. This is where you really start to refine your skills, experimenting with different brewing techniques and learning about the various types of tea available. The conversations you have, the people you meet, it all contributes to your growing obsession. And then, the magic happens. You decide to write a book. Not just any book, but a comprehensive guide to tea, covering everything from its history and cultivation to brewing methods and the proper etiquette for serving it. You call it the classic of tea, or Cha Jing, and it's revolutionary. This is where you really become Lu Yu, the tea sage. Now, the classic of tea isn't exactly a page-turner in the modern sense. Imagine if someone wrote a 300-page manual on how to properly make instant noodles. It's that level of detail. But for the Tang Dynasty, it was groundbreaking. It meticulously details the best growing regions for tea, the ideal methods for plucking and processing the leaves, and the optimal water temperature for brewing. You outline the proper teaware to use, a whole arsenal of pots, bowls, and ladles. You even describe the perfect ambience for a tea gathering, emphasizing the importance of tranquility and good company. The book is divided into 10 chapters, each focusing on a different aspect of tea. You cover everything from the origin and history of tea to the tools and equipment needed for brewing. You describe the different qualities of tea, the best ways to prepare it, and the proper etiquette for serving it. It's an exhaustive, meticulous, and dare I say, somewhat obsessive treatise on all things tea. You even go into the proper way to judge tea, like some kind of medieval tea sommelier. Seriously, the guy had opinions. Strong opinions. And people love it. The classic of tea becomes the definitive guide to tea culture. Suddenly, everyone wants to know how to brew the perfect cup. Tea consumption skyrockets, and tea houses spring up all over the country. You become a celebrity, your name synonymous with quality and expertise. Tea, in essence, becomes cool. In a very Tang Dynasty kind of way, of course. No Instagram filters involved. Now, here's a fun fact. You actually design your own teaware based on your theories of the perfect brewing experience. You envision a specific shape and size for the pot, the bowls, even the charcoal stove. These designs become highly sought after, and replicas are produced across the empire. Talk about influencer marketing. It's like being Martha Stewart, but with fermented leaves instead of floral arrangements. You, my friend, are living the dream. But your influence doesn't stop at teaware and brewing techniques. You also elevate tea from a mere beverage to a cultural experience. You emphasize the importance of mindfulness and appreciation, encouraging people to savor each sip and to find peace and tranquility in the act of drinking tea. It's not just about the caffeine. It's about the ritual, the connection, the shared experience. You essentially turn tea into a form of meditation. You travel the country, visiting tea plantations, studying different varieties, and sharing your knowledge with anyone who will listen. And, honestly, most people do listen. You're like the rock star of the tea world. You become known for your eccentric personality and your unwavering dedication to the art of tea. You are not afraid to speak your mind, and you are always eager to share your knowledge with others. Historians still argue about exactly how widespread the classic of tea actually became, and whether it single-handedly revolutionized tea culture, or if it was more a reflection of existing trends. It's probably a bit of both, if we're honest. Regardless, you change the way people think about tea. You elevate it from a simple drink to a refined art form. You instill a sense of reverence and appreciation for the plant and the process. And, perhaps most importantly, you make tea accessible to everyone, not just the elite. You democratize tea, in a way, turning it into a beverage that can be enjoyed by people from all walks of life. So, there you have it. The story of Lu Yu, the tea sage, the man who transformed a humble beverage into a cultural phenomenon. You've gone from abandoned baby to traveling actor to scholar and, finally, to the undisputed authority on all things tea. Not a bad trajectory. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? All this because you decided monks weren't your vibe and really liked a nice cuppa. Maybe we should all try a little more tea appreciation, and maybe also reevaluate our career choices. After all, who knows what kind of sage you might become? All right, settle in, friend. Let's unfurl this ancient scroll together, shall we? I know, another old book. But trust me, Lu Yu's classic of tea, or cha jing as it's known in its original tongue, is more than just dried leaves pressed between vellum. It's a blueprint, a ritual, a whole vibe for appreciating that caffeinated goodness we all crave. You're probably reaching for your favorite mug already. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now, imagine yourself back in Tang Dynasty China, around 760 AD. You're probably wearing ridiculously comfortable silk robes. Lu Yu, our main man, is wandering around, meticulously documenting every aspect of tea, from the plant itself to the proper way to slurp, though I suspect he'd frown upon actual slurping, too uncouth. The man was obsessed, and we, my friend, are about to benefit from his obsession. The book itself is divided into 10 chapters, each a step in the journey from barren mountainside to that perfect cup. Think of it as a really detailed IKEA instruction manual, but for tea. The first 3 chapters are all about origins. You trudge through misty mountains, digitally of course, noting the ideal tea plant. It prefers rocky soil, apparently, because who doesn't love a little challenge? Lu Yu believed that the finest tea grew wild, untouched by human hands, like some sort of leafy unicorn. You can almost hear him sighing dramatically at the thought of cultivated tea. Oh, the horror! He waxes poetic about the leaves, their shape, their texture, their aura, probably. He details different types, the best regions for growing, and even distinguishes between male and female tea plants. Now, historians still argue whether Lu Yu was being literal about gendered tea plants, or if this was more of a metaphorical distinction, perhaps related to the plant's vigor or leaf shape. I mean, we're talking about plants here, folks. Are we really going to start gendering our beverages? You half expect him to start assigning personality traits to each leaf. This one is a bit of a rebel, that one is definitely an overachiever. And then there's the quirky tidbit. Did you know that some sources claim Lu Yu was actually raised in a monastery by a Buddhist monk who taught him about tea? It's the perfect origin story, really, a young orphan, nurtured by wisdom and steeped in, well, tea. It all sounds a bit too perfectly crafted, doesn't it? Maybe he just really liked hanging out with monks and made it up. Or maybe it's true. The world may never know. The next few chapters get down to brass tacks. We're talking about equipment. And, oh boy, does Lu Yu love his equipment. He lists 24 separate tools needed for the perfect tea preparation. 24. You start to feel a bit inadequate with your chipped mug and electric kettle, don't you? You've got your tea grinder, your tea cooker, your tea, everything basically. Each item is meticulously described, down to the material and the specific dimensions. It's like he's designing a tiny, incredibly specialized medieval kitchen. He's got a whole section on the cauldron used for boiling water. Not just any pot will do, mind you. It has to be made of specific materials, have a certain shape, and even be placed over a carefully chosen type of charcoal. The water itself is critical. Lu Yu believed that mountain spring water was superior, followed by river water, and finally, well, water. He even had opinions on which rivers were better than others. Talk about being picky. But hey, he's the tea master, not you. You just follow the instructions. Speaking of water, here's a fun historical fact. Tea was so valuable during the Tang Dynasty that it was sometimes used as currency. You could pay your taxes in tea. Imagine walking into the DMV with a sack of leaves. Here's my registration fee, and have a cup on me. They'd probably look at you like you were crazy. But hey, you'd be following ancient tradition. Now, the burning of the firewood is important too. He preferred burning woods that produce a clean, consistent heat. The charcoal had to be properly prepared, dried, and stored. This is where you start to feel like you're joining some ancient, secretive tea cult. You can imagine initiates whispering about the proper way to stack firewood, as if it holds the key to enlightenment. You begin to suspect he might have been slightly intense. Then there's the actual brewing process. Lu Yu describes it in detail, explaining how to heat the water, grind the tea leaves, and add them to the cauldron. The key, he emphasizes, is to observe the water closely. He describes the different stages of boiling, From the fish eyes, to the crab eyes, to the string of pearls. You're suddenly transported back to high school chemistry, but instead of Bunsen burners, you're staring intently at a bubbling pot. Historians still argue whether Lu Yu's descriptions of the water's boiling stages are purely metaphorical or based on genuine observation. I mean, how much can you really tell from looking at boiling water? Maybe he just had a really vivid imagination. Or maybe he had the patience of a saint. This is where Lu Yu gets surprisingly poetic. He compares the perfect cup of tea to a jade-like nectar, a divine elixir that nourishes the body and soul. He believed that tea could cleanse the mind, calm the spirit, and even promote longevity. Suddenly, that afternoon cuppa feels a whole lot more important, doesn't it? Now, here's a quirky fact. There's a legend that Lu Yu had a pet goose that he trained to help him select the best tea leaves. Supposedly, the goose could distinguish between different varieties and would only eat the highest quality leaves. You picture him strolling through the tea fields, followed by a discerning goose, like some kind of eccentric tea-loving Bond villain. I mean, if you're going to be picky, you might as well get a goose to help you, right? The final chapters deal with the social aspect of tea. Lu Yu discusses the proper way to host a tea ceremony, the etiquette involved, and even the appropriate music to play. He emphasizes the importance of sharing tea with friends and creating a harmonious atmosphere. Tea, he believed, was a social lubricant, a way to connect with others and foster meaningful relationships. You can imagine a bunch of Tang Dynasty intellectuals sitting around, sipping tea, and discussing philosophy. Sounds a lot more civilized than your average coffee shop, doesn't it? He even mentions the importance of cleanliness and hygiene. The teacups, the table, the entire environment should be spotless. After all, who wants to drink tea in a dirty, dusty room? Though, let's be honest, how often do you really clean your favorite mug? Probably not as often as Lu Yu would have liked. No judgment here, friend. And finally, a little light joke for the road. What do you call a sad cup of tea? Misérable. So, there you have it. A glimpse into the intricate world of Lu Yu's classic of tea. It's a meticulous guide, a philosophical treatise, and a testament to the power of a simple cup. While it may seem a bit obsessive, it reminds you to appreciate the ritual, the process, and the simple pleasure of a good brew. Now go forth and steep. Just maybe don't get a goose involved. All right, settle in, settle in. Let's get comfy. Imagine you're stepping back, way back, into the Tang Dynasty. Think silks, scholars, stunning landscapes, and of course, tea. But not just any tea. We're talking about proper tea, prepared with the proper tools. And trust me, they took their tea seriously. More seriously than I take my afternoon nap, and that's saying something. So here you are. You've managed to avoid stepping in any fertilizer on the way to the tea master's abode. You can smell the earthy aroma of freshly processed leaves, mingling with the faint scent of charcoal smoke. It's incredibly inviting. You take a deep breath, trying to channel your inner Tang Dynasty tea connoisseur. You're ready to learn. And I'm here to guide you, whispering sweet tea-infused nothings in your ear. The first thing you'll probably notice, sitting there on a low table, is the jia, the tea brazier. Think of it as the heart of the whole operation. This isn't some fancy electric kettle, mind you. We're talking about a clay or bronze container filled with burning charcoal. You'll carefully tin the embers, keeping them just right. Too hot, and you scorch the water, ruining the taste. Too cool, and you end up with lukewarm, pathetic, tea-adjacent water. No one wants that. You'll need tongs to adjust the charcoal. These are often simple iron affairs, nothing too elaborate, but essential for maintaining that perfect, consistent heat. Historians still argue whether certain types of charcoal were preferred over others. Some say oak was favored for its clean burn, while others suggest fruitwood for its subtle aroma that might, or might not, influence the tea. The debate rages on. It's the historical equivalent of arguing about the best brand of coffee filter. Speaking of heat, the Tang Dynasty actually had sophisticated methods of measuring temperature, which were remarkably accurate. Imagine them carefully monitoring the water temperature with their early science. And here I am microwaving my tea after it goes cold. What a world. Next to the jia, you'll find the fu, the cauldron. Usually made of iron, this hefty pot is where the water simmers, waiting to be unleashed upon the precious tea leaves. The size of the fu would vary depending on how many guests you were serving, from a cozy solo session to a grand gathering. You listen closely. You want the water to be just right. Fish eyes appearing at the bottom, then crab eyes, then finally, string of pearls rising to the surface. That's your cue. Don't let it boil violently. That's considered barbaric. And speaking of barbaric, fringe theories suggest that some elite tea masters used cauldrons lined with silver or even gold, believing it imparted a superior flavor to the water. Pure extravagance? Maybe. But hey, if you've got the imperial coffers at your disposal, why not? I, on the other hand, am perfectly happy with my stainless steel. Though, I wouldn't say no to a gold-lined mug. Just putting that out there. Now for the tea itself. The Tang Dynasty favored tea bricks, compressed cakes of processed leaves. These weren't just lying around, though. You needed to break them down to prepare them for infusion. Enter the nian, the tea grinder. This could be a simple mortar and pestle, made of ceramic or stone, or a more elaborate contraption with a rotating wheel. You'd carefully grind the tea brick into a fine powder. Not too fine, mind you. You don't want it turning into a dusty mess. Just a nice, even consistency. And this is where things get a little different, because they didn't just steep the powdered tea. Oh no, that would be far too simple. Instead, they used a jiao, a tea whisk, to froth the tea in the water. This involved a vigorous, almost violent, whipping action, creating a thick, foamy brew. Think matcha, but with a Tang Dynasty twist. Historians still argue whether the whisking technique was a way to fully dissolve the tea powder or simply a matter of aesthetic preference. Or perhaps it was a way to work out some pent-up imperial angst. Who knows? Once the tea is properly foamed, and you've probably worked up a sweat at this point, it's time to serve. For this, you'd use a wand, a tea bowl. These bowls were often simple, elegant affairs, made of ceramic and often glazed in celadon or other earthy tones. They were designed to be held comfortably in your hand, allowing you to savor the aroma and the warmth of the tea. And, of course, to admire the perfectly formed foam. Now, don't think they were just drinking plain tea. Oh no, my friend. They added all sorts of things. Salt, ginger, orange peel, even onion. Yes, you heard me right. Onion. Imagine the possibilities. Well, perhaps you don't have to imagine. It was believed that these additives not only enhanced the flavor, but also provided medicinal benefits. A cure-all in a cup, as it were. I'll stick with my honey, thanks. This seasoning was often done with a special spoon, often made of bamboo or bone, carefully measuring out the desired ingredients. The proportions were crucial. Too much salt, and you'd end up with a briny, undrinkable concoction. Too much ginger, and you'd be breathing fire. And finally, to keep everything organized, the tea master would often have a lao, a tea chest. This was a beautifully crafted box, designed to hold all the essential tools of the tea trade. It was a symbol of status and sophistication, a testament to the importance of tea in Tang Dynasty culture. Think of it as a very fancy, very expensive toolbox, but for tea. So, there you have it. A glimpse into the world of Tang Dynasty tea preparation. It wasn't just about brewing a drink. It was a ritual, an art form, a way of life. It required skill, patience, and a deep appreciation for the subtle nuances of tea. And maybe a strong stomach if you're trying the onion version. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'll go brew myself a cup. Though, I might skip the onion this time. Perhaps I'll stick to the good old tea bag. Just don't tell the Tang Dynasty. They'd probably disown me. Alright, settle in, friends. Let's embark on a journey. A journey steeped in tradition, fragrant with leaves, and, hopefully, not too bitter. We're diving headfirst into the ancient art of tea preparation, as meticulously outlined by the granddaddy of tea himself, Lu Yu. Yes, the legendary author of the classic of tea, the man who basically wrote the tea Bible, so to speak. So, you find yourself standing at the threshold of tea mastery. Huh? Good. First things first, the water. Now, Lu Yu was super particular about the water. Like, assigning moral values to different springs particular. He believed the ideal water came from slow-flowing mountain springs. You're probably thinking, okay, Lu Yu, easy for you to say. I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat. Mountain springs aren't exactly popping up around here. And that's fair. We're not all blessed with pristine alpine streams gurgling conveniently through our backyards. But Lu Yu's point wasn't just about bragging rights. It was about purity. He understood that the water fundamentally shapes the flavor of the tea. Impurities? They'll mess with the taste. Badly. Think of it like this. You wouldn't use dish soap to wash your favorite cashmere sweater, right? Same principle applies here. Use filtered water, my friends. Please. Your taste buds and Lu Yu's ghost will thank you. Historians still argue whether Lu Yu's obsession was purely about taste, or if it had deeper spiritual implications connected to Taoist ideals of purity and harmony. Frankly, I suspect it was a bit of both. The man probably just really hated tap water. And who can blame him? Now, picture this. You've secured your pristine water source. Congratulations. And you've got your charcoal brazier, or, a modern kettle, baby steps. The next crucial step is heating that water. But not just any heating, oh no. Lu Yu was specific again. He outlined 3 distinct stages. First, you'll see tiny fish eyes, bubbles forming at the bottom of the pot. He probably had a fancier metaphor, but fish eyes is delightfully evocative. This is where a gentle whispering sound starts to emanate. The second stage involves a string of pearls effect, larger bubbles rising along the side. Now, this is where you start to get that delightful simmering brook sound. Finally, the tumultuous wave stage. This is when the water is nearly boiling and the sound becomes much louder. Now, pay very close attention here, because this is crucial. Lu Yu states you must not let the water actually reach a rolling boil. Overboiling, according to the tea master, will ruin the water's vitality. It's like squeezing all the joy out of life, but for water. And frankly, who wants joyless water? Apparently, in ancient China, overboiled water was considered old water, deemed unfit for the elite to drink and associated with the lower classes. But before you get too snobby, remember you're still making tea in your sweatpants. Just saying. Aim for those tumultuous waves, and then pull the water from the heat. This, my friend, is the sweet spot. Next up, the tea. Obviously, Lu Yu preferred tea bricks, which were common at the time. These were basically compressed tea leaves, like a very leafy, very ancient version of those protein bars you see at the gym. You need to break these down. A tiny hammer or tea pick can help. Once the tea leaves have separated from the brick, you need to grind them into a fine powder. Now, this is where things get interesting. You'll take a small amount of this tea powder and place it in the warmed bowl. Then, with the water at the perfect temperature, those tumultuous waves still echoing in your ears, no doubt, you gently pour it into the bowl. It's important to introduce the water slowly, allowing the tea powder to bloom and release its aroma. Lu Yu likens the ideal tea froth to snowy foam. A picturesque image, isn't it? The tea leaves gently unfurling in the warm water, releasing their earthy scent, creating a perfect little blizzard of flavor. Back in the Tang Dynasty, tea was sometimes mixed with things that might make you balk today. Salt, ginger, orange peel, all fair game. But hey, don't knock it till you try it. I mean, if it was good enough for emperors, well, maybe just stick to plain tea for now. Historians still argue about the specific reasons for these additions. Some say it was for medicinal purposes, others believe it was simply a matter of taste preference. I personally think some people were just really bored and decided to throw everything into the tea to see what happened. Now, you've got your beautiful bowl of foamy tea. Time to drink, right? Not so fast, grasshopper. Lu Yu advocated for taking small sips, savoring the flavor, and appreciating the moment. It's not just about gulping down caffeine. It's about engaging with the tea, allowing it to awaken your senses. Think of it as a mini meditation, but with more flavor. Now, let's talk etiquette. In Lu Yu's time, tea ceremonies were elaborate affairs. Posture was important, conversation was refined, and probably, there was a lot of subtle judging going on. One wrong move, and you were banished from polite society, never to be seen again. Okay, maybe not, but you get the picture. Tea culture has evolved significantly over the centuries, and each region has its unique customs and traditions. From the elaborate Japanese tea ceremony, shinoyu, to the Turkish tradition of offering tea in delicate tulip-shaped glasses, tea drinking has become deeply intertwined with the social fabric of countless cultures. It's a bit mind-boggling to think it all started with a discerning man and his preferred water source. But now, as you savor your carefully prepared brew, consider the journey of the humble tea leaf, from its origins in ancient China to its place as a ubiquitous beverage enjoyed around the globe. So, there you have it, a glimpse into the world of Lu Yu and the art of tea preparation. It's a process that requires patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to embrace tradition, while maybe updating it slightly for the 21st century. Will this process guarantee the perfect cup of tea? Maybe. But more importantly, it encourages us to slow down, appreciate the moment, and find joy in the simple act of brewing and drinking a cup of tea. Now go forth and brew. May your water always be pure, your leaves always fragrant, and your tea always, well, not terrible. All right, settle in, because we're diving deep today. Not into the ocean, thankfully. We're diving into water. Yeah, I know, thrilling stuff. But stick with me, because you're about to discover that the water you use to brew your tea is just as important, if not more important, than the tea itself. You can have the most exquisite, hand-rolled, first flush Darjeeling, but if you brew it with tap water that smells faintly of chlorine and despair, you're basically committing tea blasphemy. Don't be that person. Picture this. You're standing at your kitchen counter. Maybe you're wearing fuzzy socks, maybe you're not. No judgment here. You've got your favorite mug, your perfectly measured tea leaves, and water. You probably just grab the first pitcher of water you see, or even worse, you turn on the tap and use it straight. It's convenient, sure, but are you truly honoring the tea? Are you giving it the respect it deserves? Probably not. See, water isn't just water. It's a complex cocktail of minerals, gases, and sometimes, unfortunately, things you really don't want to think about. Like remnants of pharmaceuticals. Just don't dwell on it. Think about it this way. Water acts as the solvent, the vehicle, the stage upon which the tea leaves perform their flavor magic. It extracts the delicate compounds that create that beautiful aroma, that satisfying taste, well, you get the idea. And just like a bad stage can ruin even the best play, poor water can completely sabotage your tea. So what makes good water? Let's explore. First, we need to talk about minerals. Specifically, calcium and magnesium. These are the main culprits behind what we call hard water. You know, the kind that leaves a scummy residue in your kettle and makes your skin feel tight after a shower? Yeah, that stuff. While a little bit of mineral content can actually enhance the flavor of some teas, too much hardness can mask the more subtle notes and leave you with a flat, metallic taste. It's like adding too much salt to a dish. You just overpower everything. On the flip side, soft water, which is low in minerals, can sometimes make tea taste a little thin. It's like the water just can't quite grasp all the flavor and hold on to it. You end up with something that lacks body and character. It's the water equivalent of a wallflower at a dance. It's there, but it's not really there. Finding the right balance is key. And that balance, my friend, is subjective and depends heavily on the type of tea you're brewing. Historically, access to clean and palatable water has always been a driving force behind societal development. Civilizations rose and fell based on their ability to manage and control water resources. Think about the Roman aqueducts, for example. Impressive structures built to transport fresh water over vast distances. They understood the importance of good water, even if they didn't quite grasp the nuances of how it affected their tea. Though, to be fair, they were mostly drinking wine. And probably beer. Speaking of history, here's a quirky tidbit for you. In ancient China, tea masters were known to travel to remote mountain springs in search of the purest water. They believed that the location and even the specific rocks over which the water flowed could impart unique qualities to the tea. Some would even collect rainwater and store it for special occasions. Talk about dedication. I mean, I like tea, but I'm not that dedicated. I might run out and collect some rainwater, maybe, if it's not raining too hard. And this brings us to the debate. Historians still argue whether these ancient tea masters were genuinely discerning subtle differences in the water, or if it was more about the idea of purity and the ritual surrounding it. Was it the water itself that improved the tea, or the belief that it improved the tea? Placebo effect is a powerful thing, you know. Maybe they just convinced themselves that mountain spring water tasted better, and therefore, it did. Or maybe they were onto something that modern science is only beginning to understand. So, how do you, the average tea drinker, navigate this watery labyrinth? Well, the first step is to know your water. Is it hard or soft? Does it have a chlorine smell? Does it taste off? You can buy water testing kits online, or you can simply contact your local water authority for a report. Knowledge is power, my friend, and in this case, knowledge is better tea. If your tap water isn't up to par, don't despair. There are plenty of solutions. A simple water filter pitcher can remove chlorine and other impurities. A more advanced filtration system can tackle hardness and other unwanted minerals. And of course, you can always buy bottled water. Just be sure to choose a brand that is low in mineral content and doesn't have any added flavors or enhancements. We're going for pure, unadulterated H2O here, folks. Now, a little aside about bottled water. I know, it's not exactly the most environmentally friendly option. But sometimes, you gotta do what you gotta do for the sake of good tea. Maybe you can offset your bottled water habit by recycling diligently or planting a tree. Or, just feeling really guilty about it. That works too. Another thing to consider is the temperature of your water. Different teas require different temperatures for optimal brewing. Green teas, for example, are best brewed with water that is around 175 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 degrees Celsius. Any hotter, and you risk scorching the leaves and ending up with a bitter, unpleasant brew. Black teas, on the other hand, can handle higher temperatures, around 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. You can use a thermometer to measure the water temperature, or you can simply bring the water to a boil and then let it cool for a few minutes before pouring it over the tea leaves. The latter method is less precise, but it's generally good enough for most teas. Unless you're a super serious tea connoisseur, in which case, you probably already have a fancy electric kettle with a built-in temperature gauge. And you probably own a tea cozy, too. No shame in that game. Embrace your tea obsession. Here's a somewhat related historical fact. The practice of drinking tea in England really took off in the 17th century, largely thanks to Catherine of Braganza, the Portuguese wife of King Charles II. She was a huge tea enthusiast and helped popularize the beverage among the British aristocracy. So, next time you're sipping a cup of Earl Grey, you can thank Catherine for bringing tea into the British mainstream. Or blame her, depending on your feelings about British imperialism. And a quirky fact. Did you know that some people believe that the way you boil your water can affect the flavor of your tea? They claim that boiling water too vigorously can remove some of the dissolved oxygen, resulting in a flat-tasting brew. The solution? Boil your water gently, preferably in a kettle with a wide base. Or, just don't worry about it too much and enjoy your tea. I, for one, am not convinced by this theory, but hey, to each their own. Finally, historians still argue about the precise origins of tea cultivation. While it's widely accepted that tea originated in China, the exact region and timeline are still debated. Some believe that tea cultivation dates back as far as 5,000 years ago, while others argue for a more recent origin. Regardless of when and where it started, there's no denying that tea has had a profound impact on human culture and history. So, the next time you brew a cup of tea, take a moment to appreciate the water you're using. Consider its source, its mineral content, and its temperature. Experiment with different types of water and see how they affect the flavor of your tea. You might be surprised at the difference it makes. And remember, even the simplest cup of tea can be an opportunity for mindful appreciation. Okay, that's enough about water for one day. I feel like I've been talking about H2O for hours and I need some tea. Brewed with carefully selected water, of course. Alright, settle in, pull up a cushion, and let's just drift for a bit. Imagine the Tang Dynasty, China, somewhere around, say, 800 AD. The air is thick with the scent of plum blossoms and distant wood smoke. You're not quite sure how you got here, but you're wearing vaguely silk-like robes and your hair, surprisingly, is up in a perfectly respectable bun. Don't worry about the bun, just roll with it. You're ushered into a courtyard, meticulously swept, where a small group is already gathered. They're seated on low stools around a let's call it an altar. It's a low table, draped in embroidered cloth, and at its center sits a tea bowl. Not just any tea bowl, mind you. This one is probably made of ware, that celadon so prized for resembling solidified moonlight. Its glaze, smooth and cool to the touch if you were allowed to touch it. Whispers of refined taste and understated wealth. This isn't your grandma's chipped mug. You take your assigned stool, trying not to fidget. The others are remarkably composed. This isn't just about drinking tea, it's a performance. A delicate ballet of social signaling, veiled negotiations, and the subtle art of appearing utterly at ease while your inner monologue is screaming, Did I remember to thank the host's third cousin's turtle breeder for the invitation? Now, the Tang Dynasty was a golden age for tea, no question. We're talking about the era of Lu Yu, the tea sage himself, who basically wrote the definitive guide to tea preparation and consumption, the Cha Jing. Think of it as the Martha Stewart living of 8th century tea ceremonies. And just like Martha Stewart, you probably wouldn't want to spill anything on his perfectly curated table. The tea master, a wizened fellow with eyes that have seen more tea leaves than I've seen episodes of reality TV, begins the ceremony. He meticulously measures the tea, which is probably brick tea at this point, compressed and aged. Fun fact, they used to sometimes use tea bricks as currency. Imagine trying to buy a loaf of bread with a chunk of fermented leaf. Excuse me, baker, would you take a grade A pour for this sourdough? He carefully grinds the tea, adds water, and whisks it into a frothy, jade-green concoction. Historians still argue whether the frothing technique used at the time more closely resembled matcha preparation or was something uniquely Tang. But either way, it looks impressive. It certainly looks better than that instant coffee I had this morning. Each guest receives a bowl. You accept yours with a slight bow, careful not to spill a drop. It's hot, aromatic, and tastes, well, let's be honest, probably a little bitter. But you savor it, make appreciative noises, and focus on the conversation. This is where the real social dance begins. Tea, in the Tang Dynasty, wasn't just a beverage. It was a lubricant for social interactions, a tool for forging alliances, and a way to display your social standing. The quality of the tea, the elegance of the ceremony, and the company you kept all spoke volumes. You wouldn't find, say, a merchant chugging tea with the emperor, although some definitely tried. Picture a used car salesman trying to schmooze the queen. It would be awkward. And speaking of awkward, imagine being caught using inferior teaware. Oh, the scandal. It was a social faux pas of epic proportions. Forget wearing white after Labor Day. Using the wrong tea bowl could ruin your reputation. There's even a fringe theory that the intensity of tea culture during the Tang contributed to the rise of certain aristocratic families. The families who had access to the best tea, the best tea masters, and the most exquisite teaware had a clear advantage in cultivating relationships and maintaining their power. Think of it as a very sophisticated, very caffeinated version of networking. The conversation swirls around you. You hear snippets of poetry, discussions of calligraphy, and, of course, subtle political maneuvering. It's all done with a grace and subtlety that would make Machiavelli proud. A smile here, a raised eyebrow there, a perfectly timed compliment. Each gesture carefully calculated to advance your position. It's like a game of chess, but instead of moving pieces, you're moving social capital. And all the while, the tea keeps flowing. You're starting to feel a bit jittery, but you can't refuse. Refusing a cup of tea would be interpreted as a sign of disrespect, a rejection of the social bond being offered. So you keep sipping, keep nodding, keep playing the game. You notice that some guests are more animated than others. Perhaps they are closer to the host, or maybe they have a particular agenda they are pursuing. There's even a rumor, and I emphasize rumor, that certain tea ceremonies were used as a form of covert intelligence gathering. Imagine, you invite a rival official over for tea, ply him with the good stuff, and then subtly steer the conversation towards sensitive topics. A few strategically placed questions, a little flattery, and before you know it, he's spilling all his secrets. Just like that time I accidentally told my neighbor about my disastrous attempt to bake a souffle. The ceremony continues, the sun slowly sinking in the sky. The atmosphere grows more relaxed, the conversation more intimate. By now, you've probably had enough caffeine to power a small city. But you've also learned a lot. You've learned about the intricate social dynamics of the Tang Dynasty, the importance of ritual, and the power of a well-brewed cup of tea. And you've managed to avoid any major social blunders, which is a victory in itself. As the ceremony winds down, you offer your thanks to the host and take your leave. You emerge from the courtyard feeling slightly dazed, but also strangely exhilarated. You've just experienced a glimpse into a world where tea was more than just a drink. It was a way of life. It was a social currency, a political tool, and a cultural touchstone. And as you walk away, you can't help but wonder, what kind of tea would Lu Yu order at Starbucks? Probably something really complicated with a custom blended foam. And you know what? Now that you mention it, you're suddenly craving a nice, big iced coffee. maybe with a shot of espresso. But hey, maybe tomorrow we'll get back to our Tang Dynasty tea time. All right, settle in, grab your favorite mug. Extra points if it's chipped and stained just so, because tonight we're diving deep into the fascinating, slightly mystical, and surprisingly medicinal world of tea. You're probably thinking, tea? Health? Spirituality? Sounds a bit woo-woo. And yeah, maybe a little, but bear with me. You might just be surprised at how intertwined tea has been with both physical and spiritual well-being for centuries. So, let's steep ourselves in the good stuff. You sit back, the warmth of the cup radiating into your hands. You take a sip. Ah, that's better. Feel that little wave of calm wash over you. That's not just caffeine. It's history, tradition, and a dash of ancient wisdom all swirling together. Because for many cultures, tea wasn't just a beverage. It was, and in some places still is, a potent medicine and a pathway to, well, something bigger. You might associate tea with a cozy afternoon chat or a British high tea with cucumber sandwiches cut into suspiciously perfect triangles, but its origins are far more intense. Legend has it that tea was discovered in China around 2737 BCE by Emperor Shennong, a legendary ruler and herbalist. Apparently, some tea leaves blew into his boiling water, and being the curious type, or maybe just really thirsty, he drank it. And thus, tea was born. Or so the story goes. Historians still argue whether Shennong was a real person or a composite figure representing early Chinese agricultural knowledge. But honestly, does it really matter? What matters is that someone figured out that steeping these leaves in hot water created something pretty special. From China, tea slowly spread its tendrils, metaphorical tendrils, unless you've got some seriously overgrown tea plants, across Asia, becoming deeply embedded in the cultures of Japan, Korea, and beyond. You find yourself imagining the sheer dedication it must have taken for those early tea masters to cultivate the perfect leaf, to understand the nuances of water temperature and brewing time, all before the invention of, thermometers. It's kind of humbling, isn't it? And speaking of humbling, let's talk about tea and Zen Buddhism. In Zen monasteries, tea wasn't just a drink to keep you awake during long meditation sessions. Although, let's be real, that was a big part of it. It was a central element of monastic life, a ritualized practice that fostered mindfulness and connection. Think of it as a liquid form of meditation. You're probably picturing monks sitting cross-legged, chanting in perfect harmony, and gracefully pouring tea into tiny bowls. And while that image isn't entirely inaccurate, there was also probably a lot of spilled tea and sleepy nodding, too. Monks are just people, after all. The Japanese tea ceremony, shinoyu, developed from these Zen Buddhist roots. It's a meticulously choreographed ritual involving specific movements, utensils, and even the architecture of the tea room itself. Every aspect of the ceremony is designed to create a sense of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Wa, Kei, Sei, and Jaku, the four core principles of shinoyu. You almost feel bad for just chucking a tea bag into a mug now, don't you? But here's a quirky tidbit for you. Did you know that some Zen monks believed that drinking excessive amounts of tea could lead to enlightenment? The idea was that the caffeine-induced alertness would help them stay focused during meditation, which, makes a certain kind of sense. Though, one imagines a few over-caffeinated monks bouncing off the walls and achieving, well, something, but maybe not quite enlightenment. You swirl the tea in your mug, watching the leaves dance in the liquid. They remind you of the complex history we're unraveling. It's time to switch gears a bit and talk about tea's role as medicine. For centuries, traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, has recognized tea as having potent medicinal properties. Different types of tea are believed to have different effects on the body. Green tea, for instance, is considered cooling and detoxifying, while black tea is thought to be warming and energizing. You may even have a family member who swears by some herbal remedy involving tea. Grandmothers are notorious for this. You probably know that tea contains antioxidants, those little molecules that fight off free radicals and protect your cells from damage. But beyond that, tea has been traditionally used to treat a wide range of ailments, from headaches and digestive issues to heart problems and even cancer. Of course, it's important to remember that tea is not a magic bullet. It's not going to cure all your ills, and you should definitely consult a doctor before using tea as a substitute for conventional medical treatment. I'm just saying, it has been used as such. Don't come blaming me if you try to treat a broken leg with Earl Grey. However, that doesn't stop some people from attributing frankly ludicrous healing powers to tea. There are whispers, and sometimes outright shouts, about tea as a cure-all for absolutely everything. I once heard someone claim that a specific blend of tea cured their friends. Well, let's just say a highly improbable ailment. You raise an eyebrow at that. Historians still argue over the precise mechanisms by which tea exerts its effects on the body, but it's clear that there's something more to it than just caffeine and antioxidants. Some researchers believe that the synergistic interaction of various compounds in tea is what gives it its unique healing properties. Others point to the placebo effect, suggesting that the ritual and expectation surrounding tea drinking can contribute to its perceived benefits. Personally, you think it's probably a little bit of both. And now you're taking another sip, appreciating not just the flavor, but the feeling. A sort of connection. You understand why some people feel that tea has a spiritual dimension, a way to slow down, to be present, and to connect with something larger than yourself. The simple act of brewing and drinking tea can be a form of meditation. It forces you to slow down, to pay attention to the details, to appreciate the present moment. You focus on the aroma, the color, the taste, the warmth. You forget about your worries, your to-do lists, your impending doom of taxes. Okay, maybe you don't entirely forget about that, but you at least put it on hold for a few minutes. Think about it. How often do you actually slow down and savor something? In our fast-paced, hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation. Tea offers a respite from the chaos, a moment of peace and tranquility in a world that is often anything but. You are reminded of that one time you tried to brew tea on a camping trip and ended up accidentally setting your sock on fire. The point is, it's a sensory experience that grounds you in the present. So, the next time you brew a cup of tea, take a moment to appreciate the journey it has taken, from the ancient tea gardens of China to your humble mug. Consider the centuries of tradition, the countless hands that have cultivated and processed the leaves, and the millions of people who have found solace and healing in its warm embrace. And while you're at it, maybe try to avoid setting your socks on fire. Maybe, just maybe, you'll find that tea is more than just a beverage. It's a medicine, an elixir, and a pathway to a little bit of peace and tranquility in a chaotic world. Or, just a tasty drink. Whatever works for you. Now go forth and steep. All right, lean in close, grab your favorite mug. Herbal tea is perfectly acceptable, no judgment here, and let's settle in for a little story. A story about leaves. Yes, leaves. Specifically, the leaves that transformed from humble shrubbery to the drink of scholars and monks, a beverage so refined it whispered of status and enlightenment. Get comfy. This might take a minute. Imagine you're a weary traveler, perhaps a scholar yourself, tramping through the rugged terrain of ancient China. The year? Maybe somewhere around the Tang Dynasty. Give or take. The wind whips at your face, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. You trudge along a narrow path, worn smooth by centuries of foot traffic. Your sandals are dusty, your robes, well, let's just say they've seen better days. Suddenly, you stumble upon a small monastery nestled amongst the bamboo groves. Smoke curls lazily from its chimney, promising warmth and, hopefully, something to eat. You approach cautiously, and a young monk, his face serene and his eyes sparkling with a gentle wisdom that puts your own academic achievements to shame, greets you. He offers you shelter, a bowl of simple rice, and, crucially, a steaming cup of tea. But not just any tea. This isn't the rough, bitter brew of the peasantry. No, this is something different. The aroma is intoxicating, a delicate blend of earthy notes and floral sweetness. As you take your first sip, you feel a soothing warmth spread through your chest. Your weary muscles relax, your mind clears, and for a moment, you forget about the endless road ahead. Ah, bliss. It's so good it almost makes you forget the existential dread creeping in around the edges of your psyche. Almost. But how did this magical elixir, tea, in case you spaced out, make its way into the hallowed halls of monasteries and the private studies of esteemed scholars? Well, that, my friend, is where our story gets interesting. Initially, tea wasn't exactly the picture of refinement. You see, in its earliest iterations, tea wasn't steeped. It was often consumed as a sort of medicinal broth. Think of it more like a bitter veggie soup than the delicate brew you might be familiar with. Some accounts even suggest that tea leaves were sometimes added to porridge, giving a whole new meaning to breakfast of champions. Can you imagine? Green tea oatmeal? I think I'd rather just not. But somewhere along the line, someone, perhaps a particularly adventurous monk with a penchant for culinary experimentation, figured out that processing the leaves differently and preparing them with hot water could unlock a whole new level of flavor and aroma. And that's when things started to change. The process of steaming and drying the leaves, a technique that developed over time, helped to mellow the bitterness and enhance the more subtle, complex flavors. Now, here's a mainstream historical fact for you. The Tang Dynasty, 618 to 907 AD, is generally considered the golden age of tea in China. It was during this period that tea cultivation and consumption really took off. The publication of the classic of tea by Lu Yu, a kind of tea Bible detailing everything from tea cultivation to brewing techniques, solidified tea's place in Chinese culture. Think of it as the joy of cooking, but for leaves. But the rise of tea wasn't just about better flavor. It was also about its perceived benefits. Monks, in particular, found tea incredibly useful. Long hours of meditation required intense focus, and tea, with its mild stimulant properties, helped to keep them alert and awake without the jitters associated with, say, a triple espresso. Plus, it was rumored to suppress the appetite, which was a bonus for monks who were practicing abstinence. Talk about a win-win. Scholars, too, discovered the joys of tea. The act of preparing and drinking tea became a ritual, a way to cultivate mindfulness and enhance creativity. It provided a welcome break from the rigors of study, a moment of calm amidst the chaos of intellectual pursuits. Imagine brainstorming your next philosophical treatise over a delicate cup of Longjing green tea. Sounds pretty sophisticated, right? Now, for a quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe that the early popularity of tea was fueled, in part, by its association with Taoism. Taoism, with its emphasis on harmony with nature and the pursuit of inner peace, found a natural ally in tea. The meditative process of preparing and drinking tea was seen as a way to connect with the natural world and cultivate a sense of inner balance. I mean, makes sense. Way better than screaming at the sky, right? But there's another layer to this whole tea and elite thing. You see, as tea became more popular, it also became more expensive. The best teas were often grown in remote mountain regions and required specialized knowledge to cultivate and process. This meant that only the wealthy and powerful could afford to indulge in the highest quality brews. And that's where the status symbol part comes in. Offering a guest a rare and exquisite tea became a way to demonstrate your wealth and good taste. It was a subtle, yet unmistakable, signal of your social standing. Think of it as the ancient Chinese equivalent of flashing a designer handbag or driving a fancy car. Oh, this old thing? Just a rare orchid oolong from the Wu-Yi Mountains. Don't mind if I do. The tea ceremony, which evolved over time, further elevated tea's status. These ceremonies were elaborate affairs, involving specific utensils, precise brewing techniques, and carefully choreographed movements. They were a performance, a display of skill and refinement. It was like attending a tea-themed ballet, with delicate porcelain cups and steaming pots taking center stage. You had to be trained, like a secret tea ninja, to do everything right. And this is where we get to an open scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the spread of tea drinking among elites was primarily driven by its practical benefits, alertness, focus, its association with philosophical ideals, Taoism, Zen Buddhism, or its status as a luxury good. Was it the caffeine, the philosophy, or the bragging rights that really fueled the tea craze? The answer, of course, is probably a combination of all three. But here's the thing. Regardless of the specific motivations, the fact remains that tea became deeply intertwined with the culture and identity of China's elite. It was more than just a drink. It was a symbol of their values, their aspirations, and their place in society. Imagine being a young scholar, eager to impress your mentors. You spend hours studying ancient texts, honing your calligraphy skills, and, of course, mastering the art of tea preparation. You learn to distinguish between different varieties of tea, to appreciate the nuances of flavor, and to perform the tea ceremony with grace and precision. You understand that tea is not just a beverage. It's a gateway to a world of knowledge, culture, and social connection. It's a way to show respect, to build relationships, and to elevate yourself in the eyes of your peers. It's also a good excuse to procrastinate, for academic purposes. And so, tea's influence spread, carried on the wind, infused into the very fabric of Chinese society. From the humble monasteries to the imperial court, from the scholar's study to the bustling marketplace, tea became an integral part of daily life. And it all started with a few adventurous monks, a little experimentation, and a whole lot of hot water. So, the next time you brew yourself a cup of tea, take a moment to appreciate the long and fascinating journey it has taken. From its humble beginnings as a medicinal broth to its current status as a global phenomenon, tea has touched countless lives and shaped cultures around the world. And who knows, maybe you'll even unlock some hidden enlightenment yourself. Or, at the very least, avoid falling asleep in your next Zoom meeting. You're welcome. All right. Hey there, sleepyheads, settle in. Grab your favorite mug, jasmine, oolong, pu'er, whatever floats your boat. Today, we're diving deep, like really deep, into a topic that's both soothing and surprisingly complex: tea and poetry in the Tang Dynasty. Yeah, you heard me right. We're going full Gongfu tea ceremony on this one. So, picture this. It's the Tang Dynasty, roughly 618 to 907 AD. That's like a really long time ago. China is booming. It's a golden age of art, culture, and, you guessed it, tea consumption. You're probably picturing emperors in silk robes, right? Spot on. But you're also picturing poets, ink brushes in hand, scribbling away under the moonlight, fueled by what? Monster Energy drink? Nope. It's tea, baby. Tea. Now, you might be thinking, tea? What's the big deal? Well, friend, let me tell you, it was a big deal. Tea wasn't just some beverage. It was practically a social lubricant, a philosophical muse, and a political statement, all rolled into one steaming cup. Imagine coffee, but instead of keeping you wired and jittery, it makes you contemplate the meaning of existence. Or at least, that's the vibe they were going for. You trudge through the bustling Tang capital, Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an. The air is thick with the scent of incense, spices, and, yep, you guessed it, tea. You pass by tea houses, overflowing with scholars, merchants, and officials, all sipping and chatting. The sound is a gentle murmur, punctuated by the clinking of porcelain. Someone's probably complaining about their latest poem rejection. Ah, the plight of the artist, timeless, isn't it? You too feel the pull. You decide to indulge. You enter one of these establishments. The interior is dim and cozy, lit by paper lanterns. You find a seat at a low table and order a cup. It arrives in a delicate porcelain cup, the steam swirling upwards, carrying a fragrant aroma. You take a sip, and you have to admit, it's actually pretty good. But here's the thing, it's not just the taste. It's the whole experience. The ritual, the atmosphere, the company. It's all intertwined. It's the ancient equivalent of a cafe writing session, minus the existential dread of checking your bank balance afterwards. You might ask, where did this tea obsession come from? Well, its origins, of course, reach back further than the Tang. But it was during the Tang that tea really took off. Lu Yu, now there was a man who understood tea. He wrote the classic of tea, or the Cha Jing, the definitive guide to all things tea-related. We're talking about the proper way to grow it, process it, brew it, and drink it. It's basically the tea Bible. He even detailed the specific types of water to use. We are talking about a beverage, right? Thanks to Lu Yu, tea went from being a regional thing to a national obsession. It even became a form of currency. Now that is value. Historians still argue whether Lu Yu was a genuine tea connoisseur or just a really good salesman. But hey, whatever his motivations, he certainly knew how to brew up a craze. Now, how does all this relate to poetry? I'm getting there. Hold your horses. You see, the Tang Dynasty was a golden age for poetry. Poets like Li Bai and Du Fu are still household names today. And what were these poets drinking while they were penning their masterpieces? You guessed it, tea. It became a symbol of refinement, taste, and intellectual pursuits. So, you're a Tang Dynasty poet. You're sitting in your garden, surrounded by bamboo and plum blossoms. You've got your brush, your ink, and, of course, your tea. You take a sip. The warmth spreads through you, calming your mind, inspiring your thoughts. You start to write. And what do you write about? Well, sometimes you write about love, or war, or nature. But sometimes you write about tea. Tea poems became a whole genre in themselves. Poets wrote about the taste, the aroma, the ritual, the effects. They compared it to jade, to clouds, to the elixir of immortality. They wrote about the joy of sharing a cup with a friend, the solace of drinking it alone, and sometimes the frustration of spilling it on their favorite scroll. Can you imagine how upset they were? That stuff was like ink to them. Think about it. Ah, tea, you stain my clothes, but also my soul. Dramatic, I know. They also wrote about the social status associated with tea, the quality of your tea, the way you served it. It all said something about who you were. The emperor even gave out tea as gifts, like the ancient equivalent of a Starbucks gift card. Only way classier, of course. Of course, it wasn't all just flowery language and spiritual enlightenment. There's some real, gritty reality mixed in as well. Tea plantations sprung up, often relying on the labor of tenant farmers. Taxes on tea became a major source of revenue for the government. The politics of tea, as boring as that sounds, played a surprisingly important role in the Tang Dynasty. Like, you're probably thinking, ugh, taxes, but back then, it was like seriously affecting people's lives. Not a laughing matter. Quirky tidbit. Did you know that some Tang Dynasty officials used to judge each other's competence based on their ability to identify different types of tea by taste alone? Imagine that as a job interview. Talk about high pressure. So, tell me, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Brewing the perfect cup of silver needle, of course. The influence of tea even extended beyond poetry. It inspired paintings, calligraphy, and ceramics. Tea wares became highly prized objects, symbols of wealth and status. Think of it as the art world getting obsessed with the beverage. Everything became about the aesthetic of tea. Can you see the art exhibits now? The teacup, a metaphor for life? I'd go. You leave the tea house, feeling refreshed and inspired. You wander through the city, noticing the tea shops, the tea gardens, the tea-themed artwork. You realize that tea is everywhere, woven into the fabric of Tang Dynasty life. So, what can we learn from all this? Well, for one thing, we can see how a seemingly simple beverage can have a profound impact on culture. Tea wasn't just something to drink. It was a symbol, a ritual, a way of life. You just don't get it, man. It's more than just a drink, it's a feeling. Historians still argue whether the Tang Dynasty's obsession with tea was a genuine cultural phenomenon or a clever marketing campaign orchestrated by tea merchants. But either way, it worked. And it left us with a legacy of beautiful poetry, exquisite art, and, of course, a really good cup of tea. It's a reminder that even the smallest things in life can have a big impact, and that sometimes the best inspiration can be found in a simple cup of tea. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'll go brew myself another one. I hope you enjoyed this little tea-infused trip. Sweet dreams, and may your tea always be strong. Actually, no, you're still here. Don't sleep yet. Okay, settle in, grab your chamomile, or pu'er, if you're feeling historically accurate, and let's just sink into a nice, warm bath of Tang Dynasty tea culture. You're probably thinking, tea? How exciting can that be? Trust me, more than you think. You're about to be steeped, get it? In all the regional nuances of tea consumption during one of China's most glorious dynasties. Think of this as less of a history lesson and more of a really long ASMR video about ancient beverage preferences. You trudge along the dusty Silk Road. Imagine the sun beating down on your back, the air thick with the scent of spices and camel. You've finally reached Chang'an, the cosmopolitan capital of the Tang Empire. You wander through the bustling marketplace, a cacophony of sounds assaulting your ears, hawkers yelling, merchants bartering, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. It's overwhelming, right? You need a pick-me-up. So, you duck into a tea house. Inside, it's dimly lit, a welcome respite from the blinding sun. The aroma of steamed tea leaves hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of damp clay from the teaware. Here in the capital, tea is a refined affair. You observe the ritual carefully. The server, with practiced grace, measures finely ground tea powder into a bowl. Hot water is then whisked into the powder, creating a frothy, jade-green beverage. This, my friend, is jian cha, whipped tea, and it's all the rage among the elite. You take a sip, the slightly bitter, slightly sweet liquid coating your tongue. It's energizing, invigorating, and you feel immediately more sophisticated just by association. It's fancy. Now, this whole jian cha business, it wasn't just about the taste, although that was important, obviously. It was a status symbol. The intricate whisking technique, the quality of the tea, the elegance of the teaware, all telegraphed your wealth and cultural refinement. Essentially, your tea game had to be on point to be taken seriously in Chang'an society. Think of it like having the latest iPhone, but, made of jade and filled with leaves. And if you accidentally used a chipped bowl? Oh, the horror. That's social suicide right there. The Tang Dynasty, you see, really invented tea snobbery. And you're right there in the thick of it. Did you know that Emperor Xuanzong, a serious tea aficionado, even established an imperial tea plantation? He needed the good stuff, of course. That's right. The emperor himself was involved in the production of tea, ensuring a constant supply of the finest leaves for the court. Talk about dedication to the bean, or leaf, in this case. But hold on, not everyone was a fan of this elaborate, almost performative tea ceremony. You see, the further you traveled from the capital, the more relaxed things got. Imagine now you're heading south. It's humid, almost unbearably so, and the landscape is lush, green, and teeming with life. You trudge through dense bamboo forests, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and exotic flowers. You finally stumble upon a small village nestled in the mountains. Here, the tea culture is vastly different. Forget the delicate whisking and fancy bowls. Here, tea is a practical necessity, a daily staple. You're offered a bowl of boiled tea. This involves boiling tea bricks with ginger, orange peel, and sometimes even spices like mint and jujube. It's a far cry from the refined jian cha of Chang'an, but it's warming. You taste it, and it's strong, robust, and slightly bitter, but also incredibly refreshing. It's like a punch in the face of flavor, but in a good way. In these southern regions, tea was more about sustenance than status. It was a way to combat the humidity, quench thirst, and provide much-needed energy for the arduous work of farming and trading. Forget delicate porcelain. Here tea was often brewed in large iron kettles over open fires. Functional, practical, and definitely not Instagram-worthy. Which, let's be honest, is probably a good thing. Imagine trying to get the perfect filter on a smoky kettle in the middle of nowhere. Nightmare fuel. Now, this boiled tea might sound a little unconventional, but it was incredibly popular among the common folk. Not only was it cheap and easy to prepare, but it also helped to preserve the tea leaves for longer periods. Tea bricks were much easier to transport and store than loose leaves, making them ideal for traveling merchants and farmers. It's like the instant coffee of the Tang Dynasty, except probably less processed. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe that in the more remote areas, people even added salt and butter to their tea. You heard that right. Salt and butter. It might sound disgusting to our modern palates, but it was a common practice in many nomadic cultures, and it provided essential nutrients and electrolytes. Okay, I'm going to be honest here. Maybe that does sound disgusting. Historians still argue whether the different brewing methods were strictly regional or if social class played a bigger role in tea preference. Was it simply a matter of geography, or was it a conscious choice to embrace or reject the prevailing trends of the capital? Or was it simply what was available? We may never know for sure. But hold on, you can't forget about the north of the empire. Time to wrap up warm. Picture this. You're now traversing the vast, arid steppes of the north. The wind howls around you, whipping sand into your face. The landscape is harsh and unforgiving, and the air is thin and dry. You seek shelter in a nomadic yurt, a temporary haven from the relentless elements. Here, tea is a precious commodity, a vital source of hydration and warmth. In these northern regions, tea was often traded with nomadic tribes in exchange for horses and other livestock. For them, tea wasn't just a beverage, it was a form of currency. Talk about high value. You notice they're not whisking or boiling. You're invited to share a bowl of brick tea, crumbled and boiled with milk, and sometimes even with roasted barley flour. It's salty, savory, and incredibly filling. It might sound like a bizarre concoction, but it's exactly what you need to survive in this harsh environment. Trust me, it warms you right down to your core. Think of it as the soup made of tea. Actually, don't think too hard about it. Just drink it. This practice of adding milk and other ingredients to tea was likely influenced by the nomadic cultures of Central Asia. These tribes, accustomed to a diet rich in dairy and meat, naturally incorporated these elements into their tea preparation. It's like a cultural fusion in a teacup. Or, a wooden bowl. And here's a fringe theory for you. Some researchers suggest that the nomadic tribes used tea as a form of mild stimulant to help them stay alert during long journeys and hunting expeditions. It's like the Red Bull of the ancient world. Now, imagine you're a Tang Dynasty official posted to a remote outpost in the north. You yearn for the refined Jian cha of the capital, but you're stuck drinking salty, milky tea with nomadic herders. Talk about culture shock. Your porcelain teacup gathers dust in your trunk as you embrace the local customs, or at least pretend to. Adaptation is key to survival, after all, especially if you want to avoid offending your hosts and potentially getting stranded in the middle of nowhere. So, there you have it, a whirlwind tour of the diverse tea cultures of the Tang Empire. From the elegant tea houses of Chang'an to the humble villages of the south and the nomadic yurts of the north, tea played a vital role in the lives of people from all walks of life. It wasn't just a beverage, it was a reflection of their values, their customs, and their environment. It was social signaling through the steeping of leaves. One last quick fact, the Tang Dynasty saw the publication of the Cha Jing, or the Classic of Tea, by Lu Yu. This book standardized tea preparation and appreciation, and it had a profound influence on tea culture throughout China. Lu Yu, bless him, basically wrote the tea Bible. But one thing is certain, whether you preferred your tea whipped, boiled, or mixed with milk and barley flour, the Tang Dynasty was a time of great experimentation and innovation in the world of tea. So next time you brew yourself a cup, take a moment to appreciate the long and fascinating history behind this humble beverage. Maybe skip the salt and butter though, unless you're feeling adventurous. Okay, I need a nap. Good. Whatever time of day it is for you. Okay, settle in, grab your chamomile, or dare I suggest, maybe a nice, strong pure? We're diving deep, folks, into the fragrant, verdant world of tea, specifically how this delightful brew turned the Tang Dynasty into a financial powerhouse. Picture this. You're slowly traversing a winding mountain path, the mist clinging to your robes. You can smell the damp earth, the faint scent of pine, and yes, that unmistakable aroma of tea. You might even hear the rhythmic thwack of someone pruning tea bushes in the distance. The Tang Dynasty, flourishing from the 7th to the 10th century, is often considered a golden age of Chinese civilization. Art, poetry, and technological innovation blossomed. It's all very picturesque, very zen. But underneath all that refined beauty, there was, of course, the ever-present need for cash. And that's where tea steps onto the stage, center spotlight, ready to perform its economic magic. You see, before the Tang, tea was around, sure, but it was more of a niche thing. Think of it like artisanal kombucha today. Some people were into it, mostly monks and scholars who appreciated its, shall we say, alerting qualities. But its consumption was hardly widespread. It wasn't exactly flying off the shelves. But then something changed. Lu Yu wrote the Classic of Tea, a sort of tea Bible, meticulously detailing its cultivation, preparation, and, crucially, its appreciation. It's like Martha Stewart getting obsessed with Earl Grey. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about tea. And that's a good thing, because tea production and distribution was about to become a serious business. We're talking imperial decree level serious. The Tang government, ever watchful for ways to fill the imperial coffers, quickly realized that tea wasn't just a beverage, it was a tax opportunity. Imagine the possibilities. They began to implement policies to encourage tea cultivation, especially in the southern provinces where the climate was just right. Now, some historians still argue whether the Tang actively forced farmers to grow tea, displacing other crops. Let's just say the encouragement might have been a little persuasive. Now, you might be thinking, okay, great, more tea. But how does that translate into actual gold? Well, it's all about trade, baby. The Tang Dynasty controlled vast trade routes, including the famed Silk Road, which, despite the name, was also about a lot more than just silk. It was a highway for goods, ideas, and, you guessed it, tea. Caravans laden with tea bricks, pressed and dried tea leaves, snaked their way across mountains and deserts, heading towards Tibet, Central Asia, and even as far as the Middle East. Imagine the scene. You are a weary traveler, weeks into a grueling journey. The sun beats down mercilessly, your throat is parched, and you're starting to question all your life choices. Then, you arrive at an oasis. And what do you find? Not just water, my friend, but a steaming cup of tea. Instant morale boost. You'd pay good money for that, wouldn't you? And that, in a nutshell, is how tea became a valuable commodity. The Tang government, always keen to capitalize on a good thing, established a tea monopoly. They controlled the production and distribution, setting prices and raking in the profits. Think of it as the OPEC of tea. It was a hugely profitable venture, contributing significantly to the Tang Dynasty's wealth and power. The revenue generated from tea taxes helped fund infrastructure projects, like the Grand Canal, which further facilitated trade and transportation. It also helped to maintain a large army, because even golden ages need a bit of muscle to keep the peace. Ironically, some scholars now posit that tea drinking also indirectly impacted the army's efficiency, as soldiers were probably less likely to drink alcohol when a caffeinated alternative was readily available. A surprisingly sober army, a scary, yet potentially efficient thought. But the economic impact of tea wasn't just about government revenue. It also stimulated the growth of local economies in tea-producing regions. Small villages transformed into bustling market towns, driven by the demand for tea. Farmers prospered, merchants grew rich, and the entire region thrived. It was a true tea-fueled economic boom. And it wasn't just the farmers and merchants. Think of all the associated industries: the potters who made teacups, the basket weavers who crafted tea carriers, the artists who painted tea-themed murals. It was a whole ecosystem built around this single, leafy beverage. Now, while the Tang Dynasty's tea monopoly was a financial boon, it wasn't without its downsides. The government's control of the tea trade often led to corruption and inefficiency. Officials skimmed profits, quality suffered, and the poor were often priced out of the market. It's the classic story of government intervention gone a little overzealous. There were also instances of smuggling, as people tried to bypass the government monopoly and sell tea on the black market. After all, human ingenuity is inversely proportional to how heavy the tea tax is. And here's a quirky bit of history for you. During the Tang Dynasty, tea was sometimes used as currency. Yes, you could literally pay for goods and services with tea bricks. Imagine going to the market and trading a brick of tea for a chicken. It's like something out of a post-apocalyptic barter system. I'll trade you 2 tea bricks and a rusty can opener for that donkey. I bet the chicken wasn't complaining. Of course, the Tang Dynasty didn't last forever. Internal rebellions and external pressures eventually led to its decline. But the legacy of tea endured. The Tang Dynasty's embrace of tea transformed it from a niche beverage into a national obsession. It paved the way for tea to become the global phenomenon it is today. And historians still debate the extent to which tea revenues helped finance the military suppression of the Lushan rebellion. It's a complex question with no easy answers. Regardless, tea became inextricably linked to Chinese culture and economy. So, the next time you sip a cup of tea, take a moment to appreciate its rich history. It's more than just a beverage. It's a symbol of trade, culture, and, yes, even a little bit of imperial ambition. It's a testament to the power of a simple leaf to shape empires and transform economies. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for me to make another cup. Perhaps some Longjing this time. All right, settle in. Grab your comfiest blanket, maybe a steaming mug of, well, what else? Today, we're diving deep, deep, into the murky, marvelous, and surprisingly militaristic origins of Chinese tea culture. Forget those dainty teacups and delicate floral patterns for a minute, okay? We're going back, way back, to the Tang Dynasty, a period that makes even the most dedicated history buffs go, whoa, that was a while ago. You're trudging along, following the winding paths of ancient China, the air thick with humidity and the scent of, well, probably a lot of fertilizer, honestly. But stick with me. It's the Tang Dynasty, somewhere around the 7th to 10th centuries. Think silk robes, powerful emperors, poets waxing lyrical about the moon, and of course, tea. Lots and lots of tea. And you, my friend, are parched. Now, you might think tea was always this refined, almost ritualistic affair, a peaceful pause in the day. And while that's definitely part of the story now, the Tang Dynasty's relationship with tea was a bit more utilitarian. See, before the Tang, tea was mostly seen as a medicinal brew, something you'd gulp down when you felt a bit under the weather. Think of it like the ancient Chinese equivalent of chicken noodle soup. Only, probably tasted less like chicken. But the Tang emperors, those trend-setting titans of taste, took a liking to the stuff. Especially Emperor Xuanzong. He supposedly attributed his, longevity to regular tea consumption. I mean, who am I to argue with an emperor? Maybe a cup of tea really is the secret to eternal youth. Maybe I should start charging more for my channel. Nah, just kidding. So, tea goes from peasant remedy to imperial indulgence. Naturally, it becomes a hot commodity. Soon, everyone's clamoring for the best leaves. And that's when things get interesting. You feel a slight jostle, a hand reaching for your imaginary travel pouch. Relax, it's just a tea merchant, and he's got a proposition for you. A tea proposition. He wants you to invest in his new processing method. You see, during the Tang, they weren't just steeping loose leaves in hot water. Oh no, that's far too simple. Instead, they steamed the tea leaves, pounded them into cakes, and then sometimes even flavored them with things like ginger, orange peel, and even wait for it, salt. Imagine that. Salty tea. The kind that would make your grandmother faint dead away. You take a sip, imaginary sip, of course, and you're surprisingly not disgusted. It's actually kind of invigorating. Maybe this tea merchant is onto something. Historians still argue whether these flavored tea cakes were truly delicious. I mean, delicious is a subjective term, especially when we're talking about flavors that haven't been trendy for, 1,000 years. But, delicious or not, they were definitely popular. And the method for making them became standardized, thanks in large part to a man named Lu Yu. You see him over there, in that simple robe, meticulously grinding tea leaves? That's Lu Yu. He's the tea sage, the patron saint of tea, the OG influencer of all things tea-related. Lu Yu wrote the classic of tea, Cha Jing, Xinghao Cha Jing, the definitive guide to tea cultivation, preparation, and appreciation. It's basically the Bible for tea lovers, a comprehensive manual covering everything from the best types of water to use, mountain spring water, naturally, to the proper etiquette for tea ceremonies. It's considered the first definitive work on tea. Seriously, the guy was obsessed. In the best way possible, of course. You glance down at your own travel-stained notebook. Maybe you should write a classic too, a definitive guide to napping? The art of napping, perhaps. It has a ring to it. But then again, Lu Yu and his tea classic were truly legendary. The classic of tea was the guide for how to properly process and prepare tea. Because before Lu Yu, let's be honest, it was probably a bit of a free-for-all. Toss some leaves in a pot, add whatever spices you have lying around, and hope for the best. But Lu Yu brought order to the chaos, standardization to the seemingly simple act of brewing tea. He even had very specific instructions on how to use tea utensils. And that's when, my friend, you notice something else. Something decidedly more militant. You hear the clang of metal, the shouts of soldiers. What's going on? Turns out, tea was also becoming a strategic resource for the Tang government. It wasn't just for fancy emperors and refined scholars anymore. It was fueling the empire's economy and even its military. See, the Tang Dynasty was constantly dealing with nomadic tribes along its borders. And what did these tribes want? Horses. And what did the Tang Dynasty have that the tribes wanted? You guessed it, tea. The Tang established a system called the Cha Ma Huanshi, or the Tea Horse Exchange. Basically, they traded tea for horses, which were essential for the Tang army. It was a win-win mostly. The Tang got their war horses, and the nomadic tribes got, tea. I mean, it was probably a pretty good deal for them too. Historians still debate whether this system exploited the nomadic tribes. Did the Tang offer fair prices for the horses? Or were they taking advantage of the tribe's dependence on tea? It's a complex issue, and there are no easy answers. What's not a debate is the fact that tea trade was a major source of revenue for the Tang Dynasty. Suddenly, Your little cup of tea doesn't seem so innocent anymore. It's not just a beverage, it's a commodity, a political tool, a source of power. It's the lifeblood of an empire. You watch the soldiers march by, their swords glinting in the sun, and you realize that tea played a surprisingly important role in keeping them on the move. You take another sip, and it tastes different, more strategic. And get this, as tea was becoming more popular and lucrative, tea taxes were implemented. This brought huge revenue to the Tang government. One source even indicates that tea tax revenues accounted for almost half of the total revenue for the Tang Dynasty. I bet the early tea farmers didn't anticipate that their little crops would be the key to half of a nation's income. So the next time you brew a cup of tea, take a moment to appreciate its rich history. Think about those Tang Dynasty emperors, the salty tea cakes, the tea sage Lu Yu, and the tea horse exchange. Remember that every sip you take is a connection to a past that is both refined and surprisingly warlike. It's an ode to how the practices of the Tang Dynasty shaped later tea culture. And now, as you drift off to sleep, hopefully, remember that even the simplest things, like a humble cup of tea, can have a profound and lasting impact on the world. Sleep tight. Don't let the tea mites bite. Right, settle in. Grab your comfiest blanket, maybe a cup of chamomile. Ironic, I know, because we're diving headfirst into the swirling, steaming world of tea, and we're going way beyond the Tang Dynasty. Remember that elaborate, almost ritualistic tea preparation we talked about last time? Well, prepare to see how that elegant dance morphed and evolved, sometimes gracefully, sometimes not so much. Think of it like this. The Tang Dynasty was the jazz age of tea, all improvisation and artistry. What came next? Well, that's what we're about to find out. Get ready for a bit of Song Dynasty sophistication, a dash of Ming Dynasty minimalism, and a whole lot of global influence, all stirred together in a pot of, well, tea. Now, you might be thinking, tea? Really? How exciting can this be? And honestly, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just tea. But it's in the tiny details, the subtle shifts, the way people cling to tradition while simultaneously embracing innovation, that the real story unfolds. It's like watching paint dry, if the paint was slowly transforming into a masterpiece. So, the Tang Dynasty faded, empires rose and fell, and tea? Well, tea just kept on brewing. Enter the Song Dynasty. Imagine a society obsessed with aesthetics, obsessed with refinement. That's the Song Dynasty in a nutshell. And their tea ceremonies reflected that. Gone were the elaborate cakes of tea, ground and boiled with various flavorings. Instead, powdered tea, specifically matcha, became all the rage. You know, that vibrant green stuff that's currently all over Instagram? Yeah, the Song Dynasty were doing it centuries ago. Talk about ahead of the curve. You take this finely ground matcha, whisk it vigorously with hot water in a bowl, a technique known as Dian Cha, creating a frothy, emerald green concoction. The ritual became almost meditative, a performance art piece where the quality of the whisking, the color of the tea, and even the sounds created were all meticulously judged. We're talking serious tea snobbery here, folks. And speaking of serious, Emperor Huizong of Song was famously obsessed with tea. So much so, in fact, that he wrote a treatise on it. Yes, a whole book dedicated to the art of tea. Now, that's dedication. Or perhaps, just a sign that he had a little too much time on his hands. Imagine your boss writing a novel about coffee during work hours. Historians still argue whether Huizong's obsession with tea was a sign of his refined sensibilities or a distraction from the growing political turmoil within his empire. I mean, sipping matcha while the barbarians are at the gate? Not exactly a winning strategy. But hey, at least he had a nice, foamy beverage while it all went down. Here's a quirky fact for you. During the Song Dynasty, tea competitions were a thing. Imagine that, tea sommeliers battling it out, judging each other's whisking techniques and tea blends. It's like Chopped, but with more foam and less yelling, probably. And the prizes? Bragging rights, obviously, and maybe a lifetime supply of matcha. The ultimate tea lover's dream. Alright, fast forward a few centuries. The Mongols sweep in, the Song Dynasty crumbles, and the Yuan Dynasty takes over. And what happens to tea? Well, surprisingly, it survives. The Mongols, while not exactly known for their refined sensibilities, didn't completely abolish tea culture. They were more interested in conquering things. But even conquerors need a beverage, right? Though they did prefer brick tea, which was cheaper and easier to transport than the higher quality loose-leaf teas favored by the Song elite. Then, the Ming Dynasty arrives, sweeping away the Mongol influence and ushering in a new era of Chinese rule. And with the Ming came a revolution in tea preparation. Ditch the powdered tea and the elaborate whisking. The Ming emperors, particularly Hongwu, favored loose-leaf tea steeped in hot water. Simple, elegant, and dare I say efficient, this was a huge shift. It meant that tea production focused more on the quality of the leaves themselves, rather than the art of grinding and whisking. It also democratized tea drinking to a certain extent. No longer did you need specialized equipment or years of training to enjoy a decent cup. Just good leaves, hot water, and a vessel to steep them in. Here's a fun fringe fact. The Ming Dynasty saw the rise of Yixing teapots. These unglazed clay teapots, made from a specific type of clay found in the Yixing region, are prized for their ability to absorb the flavor of the tea, enhancing the taste over time. Some collectors treat them like family heirlooms, passing them down through generations, each pot imbued with the essence of countless tea sessions. One can almost imagine them whispering stories of emperors and scholars with each pour. Historians still argue whether the Ming Dynasty's shift to loose-leaf tea was driven by practical considerations or a genuine preference for the taste and aroma. Maybe they were just tired of all that whisking. I mean, who can blame them? My arm gets tired just thinking about it. But the Ming Dynasty's emphasis on loose-leaf tea had a profound impact on the future of tea. It paved the way for the development of different tea varieties, like green tea, oolong tea, and black tea, each with its own unique flavor profile and brewing method. The possibilities suddenly seemed endless. It was like discovering a whole new color palette for the tea artist. Now, let's hop across the pond, or rather, sail across the ocean, to Europe. The first documented arrival of tea in Europe was in the early 17th century, brought by Dutch traders. And let me tell you, the Europeans weren't quite sure what to make of this strange, leafy beverage. Some thought it was medicinal, others thought it was poisonous, and some just thought it tasted weird. It took a while for tea to catch on in Europe. But once it did, it became a sensation, especially in England. The English, of course, embraced tea with a fervor that bordered on obsession. They added milk, they added sugar, they created elaborate tea sets, and they turned afternoon tea into a national institution. It's said that Catherine of Braganza, the Portuguese wife of Charles II, helped popularize tea in England. She brought her own tea-drinking habits to the English court, and soon everyone was clamoring for a taste of this exotic beverage. Talk about an influencer. Here's a quirky little side note. Did you know that tea played a role in the American Revolution? The infamous Boston Tea Party was a protest against the British East India Company's tea monopoly. Colonists dumped chests of tea into Boston Harbor, sparking outrage and further fueling the flames of revolution. So, next time you sip a cup of tea, remember that it played a part in shaping the course of history. Historians still debate whether the Boston Tea Party was a legitimate act of rebellion or a case of spoiled colonists throwing a tantrum over slightly higher tea prices. Either way, it made for a pretty dramatic scene. From England, tea spread to other parts of the world, often following the path of colonization and trade. Tea plantations sprung up in India, Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and other parts of Asia and Africa. And with each new region, tea adapted and evolved, taking on new flavors and new rituals. Today, tea is the second most popular beverage in the world, after water. From the delicate green teas of Japan to the robust black teas of India, there's a tea for every taste and every occasion. You can find it served in elegant tea rooms, bustling cafes, and humble homes all over the globe. And while the elaborate tea ceremonies of the Tang and Song dynasties may seem like a distant memory, the spirit of ritual and appreciation for the simple act of brewing a cup of tea still endures. Whether you prefer your tea strong or weak, sweet or unsweetened, served in a delicate porcelain cup or a sturdy mug, the act of pausing, sipping, and savoring is a timeless pleasure. So, there you have it, a whirlwind tour of tea's evolution from the Tang Dynasty to the present day. And, yes, while it may seem just like a simple beverage, it's a cultural touchstone, a historical artifact, and a surprisingly complex topic when you dive in. And remember, the next time you're feeling stressed, just brew yourself a cup, take a deep breath, and relax. After all, as they say, keep calm and carry on brewing. Here we go, friend. Settle in, maybe fluff that pillow just a bit more. Today, we're not just brewing tea. We're steeping ourselves in its history, its comfort, and that peculiar sense of calm it somehow manages to conjure. You're probably thinking, tea again? Seriously? And yeah, maybe I am a little obsessed. But hey, there are worse obsessions, like collecting porcelain dolls. Don't do that. Right now, you're probably picturing that perfect cup, steam curling upwards, a gentle warmth spreading through your hands. Maybe it's a robust English breakfast, or perhaps a delicate jasmine green. Whatever it is, it's your cup. And that, my friend, is key. Because tea, in its essence, is about personalization. It's about taking a moment to tailor an experience just for you. It's not like coffee. All go, go, go. Tea encourages you to slow down. It's practically a liquid hug. You're probably thinking about all this while the kettle whistles its shrill little song. Fun fact, the Chinese have been cultivating tea for thousands of years, dating back to at least the Tang Dynasty. The legendary Emperor Shin is said to have discovered it accidentally when tea leaves blew into his boiling water. Imagine being that thirsty. And you, what are you thinking now? That this sounds like a legend that will never be verified? Yeah, me too. Now you pour the boiling water over the leaves. The aroma blooms, fills the air, and suddenly, the world seems a little less urgent. Let's be honest, though, even a perfect cup of tea can't solve all your problems. It can't magically erase that awkward Zoom call from earlier or make your taxes less terrifying. But it can provide a momentary pause, a gentle reset button in the middle of the chaos. You watch the tea steep, the leaves unfurling, releasing their color and flavor into the water. Historians still argue whether tea initially served primarily as a medicinal drink or a culinary staple in ancient China. Either way, it's clear they were onto something. You see, for centuries, tea remained a largely Eastern phenomenon. That is, until some enterprising Europeans got involved. Namely, the British. The British. They love their tea. Like, really love their tea. And that brings us to one of tea's quirkier chapters, tea smuggling. You know, because paying taxes is, so last century. During the 18th century, exorbitant taxes on tea led to a thriving black market, with smugglers risking life and limb to bring in the good stuff. Picture daring chases on the high seas, clandestine meetings in dimly lit taverns, all for a cuppa. Now that's dedication. I have that for biscuits. What's your vice? Now you add milk and sugar, or maybe you prefer it straight. It's your call. That's the beauty of it. There's no right or wrong way to enjoy your tea, unless you microwave it. Then we need to have words. You bring your cup to your lips and take that first sip. Aya, feels good, right? But this isn't just a drink, it's the culmination of journeys. Consider the Silk Road, the vast network of trade routes that connected East and West. Tea was one of the many precious commodities that traveled along these routes, slowly making its way into the hearts and teacups of people across the globe. I bet you're thinking, wow, he makes it sound so romantic. Yeah, I know. It's my superpower. But think about it. You're essentially participating in an age-old ritual, connecting yourself to generations of tea drinkers past. Even the Boston Tea Party, an act of rebellion that helped spark the American Revolution, hinged on, you guessed it, tea. Talk about a beverage with historical significance. You settle into your chair and take another sip. The warmth spreads, and you start to feel a sense of peace wash over you. But don't get too comfortable, because here comes the slightly bizarre part. Tea leaf reading. Yep, people used to, and some still do, believe that the patterns left by tea leaves at the bottom of your cup can predict your future. Imagine having to make small talk with someone who is convinced that your tea leaves say you're going to win the lottery. I think I'd rather face the porcelain doll collector. Historians still debate the extent to which tea influenced social and political dynamics throughout history, from shaping trade routes to fueling revolutions. But its cultural impact is undeniable. From elaborate tea ceremonies in Japan to afternoon tea rituals in England, tea has been woven into the fabric of societies around the world. As you finish your cup, you might find yourself reflecting on the simple pleasures in life. And I think that's what tea is really all about. In a world that's constantly demanding our attention, It provides a moment of quiet contemplation. You feel and you exist. That's what meditation is, if you like being all new age why about it. You set your cup down and take a deep breath. You know, there are even modern takes on tea that are worth exploring. Bubble tea, anyone? The Taiwanese invention of tapioca pearls in tea is, well, some love it, some hate it. But it proves that tea is constantly evolving, adapting to new tastes and trends. And that's why, even though tea has been around for centuries, it remains relevant and appealing today. So, whether you're a seasoned tea aficionado or a curious newbie, I hope you've enjoyed our little journey through the world of tea. I hope that you felt that liquid hug and the pause in your day. And as we come to the end of this little ramble, I hope you know what a beautiful, relaxing experience this has all been. Maybe I can get you to collect porcelain dolls now. No? Okay, now let's wind down, shall we? Just a little bit more to fully embrace the calm. The last sips of tea linger, warming your throat, leaving a subtle sweetness on your tongue. Your body feels a pleasant heaviness, your muscles relaxing, your shoulders dropping just a fraction. The thoughts that were swirling around earlier begin to soften, their edges blurring, like watercolors gently blending on paper. You become aware of the quiet sounds around you. The gentle hum of the refrigerator, the distant chirping of birds, the soft rhythm of your own breathing. All is well, and all will be well. You've journeyed through history, through continents, through the very essence of what makes tea so special. You've considered its rituals, its quirks, its surprising impact on the world. Now, just let it all settle. Let the information and the flavors meld into a peaceful stillness. There's no need to hold on to anything too tightly. Let the images of tea plantations and bustling tea houses fade into the background. Let the worries and concerns of the day dissolve into the soothing aroma of the empty cup. You're safe, you're warm, you're right here, right now. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, your body to sink deeper into whatever you're sitting on. You are calm, you are at peace, you are drifting further and further into a state of serene relaxation. The world outside can wait. For now, just breathe. And as you drift off, remember that the gentle comfort of tea is always there for you, a warm and inviting embrace waiting to be rediscovered whenever you need it most. So, close your eyes, my friend. Let go of all tension and slip into a sweet, peaceful sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.